Hey folks, Rich here at RCINFORMER.com. Thanks for stopping by and checking out this quick setup guide on the DELTAWING 50mm EDF from Banana Hobby. If you've seen the flight video, you know how well it flies. If you haven't, I'll put a link at the end. You can check out the entire flight demo. Just a quick setup guide here, folks. The plane really assembles easily with just this magnetic nose cone, and the rudder just fits into place with 4 screws. You set up your linkages, put your equipment in the cockpit and in the battery compartment area, and the plane's ready to fly. I did do a couple things to mine before taking it out to the field that I think will help you all set this thing up. First and foremost, when putting your rudder on, a vertical stabilizer just fits straight down on here. These 2 screws here, 2 screws here, put the entire thing together. But I noticed that my servo horn would not come out of the channel because the channel wasn't long enough. So with a little hobby knife, you just round this out a little bit more, maybe like 1/8 of an inch or whatever. The servo horn will be kind of lined up this way with the longitudinal axis of the plane, and then when you power it up, it'll move and come out. So if you don't make this hole a little rounder, it may or may not come out. Mine wouldn't come out, so again, a little shaving of that notch will get that thing out of there. The next thing I did was with the servos, you can see I took one hatch cover off. You'll notice here with the servo arm, for a DELTAWING you don't need a lot of control surface movement. And what I found here was using the middle hole, this plane flies great. The outer hole, there probably would be too much deflection in the control surfaces, so that middle hole really helps the plane fly well. Also, I added a carbon rod. This is a very long, thin rod. I was afraid of it flexing in flight. This isn't something you have to do, but essentially just sliding a length of carbon tube right over here. I put a little bit of glue right here, a little bit of CA, and then hardened it so the rod wouldn't move around, and it's pretty stationary. And that'll make the rod much more, a little more secure again, keep it from flexing. Also, it's a real good idea, put a piece of fuel tubing on all your clevises here, and of course also on the rudder as well. As you can see, I put one on there. Just cheap insurance, really, to keep those things in place. Also, when landing this airplane, I noticed right off the bat that the way this is set up with this scoop here, that every time you would land, this scoop's going to hit the ground first. The nose of the airplane's going to knife into the ground, probably tear up the nose pretty bad. So you can see here, I put a little skid here. Now I also noticed on the bottom of the plane there's a pad here, and a pad here, probably intended for a fixed set of landing gear, which may have been an optional thing, or maybe that was something that was early planned, but for whatever reason there wasn't any on this. So again, to keep your nose from going down into the ground, as soon as you touch down right here, it's going to nose over. The nose is going to go in. To prevent that, before I even ever flew this, again, I made this little tail skid here. Now this was very easy to make. I'll go ahead and throw up a picture right here. You can kind of see what it looks like. It's just a long piece of balsa wood. I stuck a little piece of piano wire in here, and just put a little plate, as you can see, right on the top of this thing. And then just I made the hole down in here much deeper, and as you can see in the picture here, I just inserted the whole thing in there with some contact cement. And what this does is essentially makes a little skid to keep the nose off the ground. And as you saw in the video, the plane flew quite nicely, and it landed nicely without the nose digging in the ground at all. And you can see it keeps the nose up there, and it works great. It will bend a little bit, and you can just sort of bend it back. But I have found this to be a really useful thing for the airplane. It's not anything you have to do, but as you can see from mine, I've done the video already, guys. My nose is in perfect shape on this thing. I've had absolutely no damage to it at all. So it's not a bad idea to make yourself some kind of a skid. Now, another thing I did as well here, it's hard to see sort of in the picture, but I'll try and show it. I put a piece of packing tape running all the way across here because it is a belly land airplane. This foam will get all torn up if you don't put some sort of tape here. I even wrapped it around the lip here so it goes on the inside of that a little bit. If you need to access your motor compartment, you can just use a hobby knife and just cut that to get your motor out. But again, a little bit of tape there goes a long way for preserving the bottom of the plane. Now, another thing I found out, the first flight I went out and did this, you can see the rotor in here. The nice thing about this plane too is that everything is really easily accessible. You can see the fan down in there, and it just really just unscrews, so you can actually turn it and just unscrew it right here. If you find that when you first start up your motor and spin it, or just spin it with your fingers, if the fan is scraping, okay, which mine was a little bit, I flew it anyway, but the fan blade rotor's disintegrated. So what you have to do is just really unscrew this thing, take the fan blade out, because the whole thing will just come right off. And you can see here, here's an example of kind of what happened to mine. You see the first one just kind of disintegrated and came off. So if you have any fan scraping at all, you literally just hold the back of the engine housing here, right here. You unscrew this entire rotor, and you see how easy it is to get off of here. And once I pull that thing off of there, let's go ahead and get it off of there. You'll see here that all you have to do is take a little bit of sandpaper and just very carefully sand the edges of these to get them away from the outside. I also took some sandpaper on this cowl and just very carefully shaved around here to make sure there were no tough edges. You'll also see that there's a couple washers in here, but changing out the fan blade is very easy. I actually did have a spare and was able to put it on. So it's real easy to get this thing on and off, and you just tighten it that simple. But again, the biggest point, make sure you do not have any scraping. If you do have some scraping, sand the inside of the shroud, sand the tips of your blades, balance your blades, and as long as it's not scraping the edge, this thing will run nicely. It's not a bad idea maybe to order a separate another fan blade, because even if you ingest something in here, you may tear that thing up. So anyway, that'll keep you flying nicely. As soon as I did that to mine, clean that up, this thing didn't have any more problems with the fan blade. Also, the CG on this airplane that they recommend is good. It works well. You can see I put a couple stickers on mine. Those don't come with it, but I put those there so I knew where to balance the airplane. I did need to add a little bit of weight, even with the factory battery in there, 1.25 ounces. You can see I used some wheel weights from Harbor Freight Tools right in here and right in here. Just cut some slots and stuck them in there. That's just where I put them, but you can put them wherever you want to, really. The canopy comes off here nicely. It just pops right off. Just to give you an idea of the layout, everything's Velcroed down, Velcro, 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 Velcro. I put a little block of foam in here, pulled my speed controller as far forward as I could get it, because if I didn't, those wires down there were hanging. Didn't want them hanging out there in front of the fan blade. So I pulled the speed controller as far forward as I could, put a block of foam right here, use the Velcro here to Velcro it in, and that'll keep those wires nice and tight. You can see here my receiver Velcroed down, and also the autopilot, or the 2-axis gyro here, guys. I put some heat shrink wrap around it. There wasn't any, but I put some around it, and then I opened up this flap because these are the 2 trim pots that you can adjust the gain. And I did find that my aileron gain, which I would think is the one towards the back, I had to turn it counterclockwise to reduce the gain a little, because the plane was wobbling a little bit while it was flying. But you can see everything's Velcroed down. The battery, which I'll put right in here, and you can see exactly where I placed it here. I'll try and get that in there properly for you. You want the battery as far forward as you can, because you do need that little extra nose weight. So battery's Velcroed in. You can see the receiver is Velcroed in. You can see I have one antenna running across the back here, which lines up with the longitudinal axis of the plane, and I have one horizontally or laterally here, so they're 90 degrees to each other to avoid the interference. And it's real important to make sure that your 2-axis autopilot is secured down in this direction. You don't need delta mixing on this airplane. It's already programmed into this thing. So once you secure everything in place, you basically power up this airplane and initialize the gyro, and I'll show you how what that looks like. Now, to power up the airplane and initialize the gyro is really just this simple. All you really need to do is connect the power and then leave the airplane alone for a few seconds and let the gyro stabilize. You can see the gyro's secured there to the bottom of the fuselage, as we just saw. I'll go ahead and plug this in. You leave the airplane alone, you watch the light. You see it flashed, the flight controls moved a little bit. Now the flight is steady, and that means the thing is initialized. But it's real important to leave the airplane alone while it is initializing. Just keep it still and level. Now, once it's powered up and it's ready to go, it's offering both pitch corrections and roll corrections, okay? And you want to make sure that everything's going in the correct direction, that your controls, your ailerons, your elevator, and your stick are working the right way. and also that it's correcting for you properly. So if the nose pitches up, okay, the elevators go down. If the plane goes down, the elevator goes up. If you roll right, you get a left roll correction. If you roll left, you get a right roll correction. So you can see this is correcting roll, and it's controlling pitch in the proper direction. If your flight controls are not moving in the proper direction, or your corrections are not working in the proper direction, you have to just swap two of the wires for the aileron and the elevator, either here or here. And once you get it set up, you figure out which wires go. There's a little trial and error. This thing works just great. Now I'm going to show this to you again, the initialization process here. Again, I'll plug it in again. You'll see the light come on here. It'll flash. You'll see the flight controls move. Okay, now the light is steady. You're initialized and ready to go fly. It's really that simple, guys. You do want to make sure, once again, that your board here for your autopilot is really secured to the bottom, because you can see any movement that I make in this thing. Okay, anytime I move that board around, it corrects the pitch and roll. So that thing's got to be really firmly fixed to the airplane and not bouncing around inside the cockpit. Anyway, folks, just to show you quickly underside, you can see I put the hatch back on for the fan with one screw, put the hatch back on here, and this plane really goes together well and flies nicely. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on helping you set this thing up. I appreciate you watching RC Informer and checking out this video. As always, guys, we'll see you next time.